Welcome back, Winers. My name is Amanda Lopez, president here at Transform Consulting Group. I'm so excited that you've joined us for another episode on Wine About Data, our podcast here at TCG. And I'm excited that I'm joined by my colleague, Rose Johnson. Rose, please introduce yourself to our winers.
Yeah, thanks so much, Amanda. I'm excited to be back. My name is Rose Johnson. I'm a senior project consultant with Transform Consulting Group, and I'm a proud data nerd. So really excited to be here to talk about data and how to discuss data.
Yes, yeah. I'm so excited for this episode, Rose, and it really was stimulated by a recent client project that we will talk about. But we do this a lot, right? You spend so much time collecting data, packaging it together, sharing it, but then sometimes it just you get stuck, right? And so how do we help facilitate conversations with audiences when they're receiving data, whether it's from a report, it's in a dashboard, or any other format? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So why do you think there is that problem, Rose, of, they spend so much time putting the data together, maybe it's visual and we get stuck. But before we jump right in, I forgot our wine. How could I forget that, Rose? So today I picked for us a wine from a winery in Michigan called St. Julian. And so it's a really beautiful winery. We will link the winery in our show notes. They also have spirits that they make. So I believe this is a cab. They call it their super cab.
Super cab.
Which is a great time of year for a cab. So cheers.
Cheers. I love that. It's warming.
It is just a really smooth. I love cabs because they can just be really smooth. I could definitely imagine this with a pork chop meal or a steak dinner or a chocolate dessert.
Good for warming you up.
Yeah. It's perfect for winter time. Yeah, it's really delicious and smooth and light.
Gonna have to get up to Michigan and check that out.
I know. It's one of my
good one.
Favorites. If anyone has been listening and following along, you know that I'm often bringing various wines from Michigan. So I'm sure wherever you are, there's probably beautiful wineries. But you don't need to be drinking wine to join us on our podcast today. Please fill up your glass with whatever it is that you enjoy, and we hope that you can follow along. So as I had jumped the gun, because I was so excited for our conversation today, Rose, but really we want to talk about, how do we help facilitate a conversation with data? Because we see this so often, right? We hand out a report, or you're in a meeting, a staff meeting, a board meeting, and they're looking at it and there's no conversation. It's just stalled. What do we think the challenge, and the difficulty is for that?
Well, I think a big one is just that a lot of times our data is prompted by the mandatory reporting or our annual report that we have to get out a certain time each year, or, it's something that we're required to do. And there's a firm deadline to it. We have to give that data to an audience. So that really motivates us to do that, to produce those reports. But when it comes to then talking about that data and discussing why is it important? What is it telling us? There's nobody forcing us to do that. We don't have to do that. We know we probably should do that to make the most of the information, but it's something that we have to take the initiative to dedicate time to and prioritize.
Yes, that's such a great point because, again, I think most nonprofits, right, they're so overwhelmed. They have so much to do. And so rightly so, they're just checking off the boxes, right? They got that grant report submitted, they're moving on to the next thing, or the annual report's completed, moving on to the next thing.
Exactly.
Right. So how do we help build that and integrate that into a nonprofit's, culture, right? For them to be a part of that. And that is definitely a lot of what we do with our data informed work.
Yeah. And it's making the most of time that we're already spending. It's really time intensive to gather that information, to analyze it, to put it in a format where we can make sense of it. Why wouldn't we discuss it so that we can actually use it to inform our decisions?
Yes, I love that. So think about your staff meetings that you already have internally with your team, your board meeting, and how do we help just integrate your data, your latest report, a dashboard update, whatever visuals that you might have to facilitate conversation and sharing that information.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that tip because it doesn't have to be adding a meeting. It doesn't have to be adding to calendars. It can be integrated into the work that you're already doing, the conversations that you're already having.
Yes, I love that. So what are some of the tips that we have for organizing that data discussion? Because I think a lot of times people will hand out a report, and what do we often do? We usually look at what's wrong.
Yeah, we do.
Don't we? It's just like our natural. We're so critical.
Yeah.
So what goal did we not meet?
Yeah.
Where are we like falling behind or underperforming?
Yeah. And though that's the instinct, we've really found that there's a great process that we really recommend and that we take when we talk about data. And it doesn't start there, even though that's where we might want to start. In fact, it starts with what's working well. It starts with strengths.
Yes.
And identifying based on the data, what are we doing well? What are those things that we want to continue doing or build upon? And really starts in that. I think that sets the tone for the conversation to really be positive and focused on opportunities.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. Again, so often it's easy to focus in on those misses and where we're not hitting those goals. And I love to have agencies use their data to celebrate the wins.
Yes.
And affirm the good things that are happening, the goals that you are meeting, the things you are accomplishing.
Exactly. And, you know, some things you might highlight within that is, are we doing better than we were doing last year on this? Maybe we haven't hit our goal, but we're improving.
Right.
Or noticing where we have maybe a stated goal and we've met or exceeded that. Celebrating those things with your team to kick off the conversation.
Right. And definitely you can look deeply or deeper at some subpopulations, right?
Exactly.
So this could be also an opportunity. Maybe overall you didn't hit the goal, but maybe with some specific age group or demographic, or if you serve multiple communities or different sites, that can also be a different way to say, okay, wow, it's doing really well here. I'm curious what's going on here that's differently than here.
Exactly. There are always strengths to highlight. Even if at first you think, gosh, this feels like an uphill battle, there are always some strengths that you can draw on.
Yes, and I definitely agree. It sets the tone. So then the next step in the process is then you can move into the challenges, right?
Yeah, the next step is identifying challenges. And I think with this one, it's really about opportunities. It's about opportunities to improve. So asking, you know, what maybe isn't working as well? Where have we not quite met the goal? Or where have we maybe actually gone down a little bit in our outcome? So identifying those areas that might be opportunities for improvement or growth.
Yes, I think too, the like secondary question related to that is why.
Yeah.
So that's the opportunity again to be curious. So what is not working well and what happened, or what's going on here? What do we think is possibly leading to this situation if there was a decrease from the previous year? Again, if you're looking at it by maybe different subgroups and one site's doing better or worse than another. So this is also that opportunity to like dig deeper and being able to say, okay, what's going on?
And I think that's a really good point too to emphasize with this process, because we really recommend having many voices included, to have multiple perspectives from different positions within the organization, different departments, different levels, to help answer that question of why, because the data only tells a small part of the story. The why and the so what is going to come from the conversation. The action is going to come from the conversation. And the more voices and perspectives that you have included, the more information you have to work on.
100%. I love that. And so we love to help our clients create what we call impact teams.
Yes.
Which is made up of those diverse positions, because those frontline staff, they have a whole set of knowledge that the leadership team is not privy to because they're not there on the front line, right? So they might have some context and understanding that can inform why things are happening the way they are. So it is so helpful to bring all those different perspectives. Even similarly, having somebody from your development team or marketing team who might be talking to funders or donors, they're also going to bring a different lens of understanding what are questions that those external audiences are asking, what's important to them, what do they want to know.
Exactly.
So then the third step, so we've talked about our strengths, we've talked about our challenges. So now the next step is what, Rose? Analyze
through dialogue. Is our next step. And that really means talking about it. Just talking about it and asking questions about really getting to why are we seeing the data that we're seeing? What is happening? What are maybe some of the root reasons behind some of these outcomes that we're seeing? And what is important? What's most important? We know a lot of us have a lot of data that we're looking at. Not all of it can be actively used all the time to inform our decisions. So within a group, we can determine what's most important to focus on, what's surprising or maybe goes against our assumptions. That's often data that's important to focus on. So yeah, that step's really about prioritization and then understanding, starting to get to the meaning behind the data.
Yes, I always love to ask those questions. What's surprising?
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's what data is, right? And I think what we like to say is data should stimulate questions.
Yes.
When you're looking at information, it should all of a sudden like different light bulbs going off, or like, I wonder about this, or, oh, this is interesting here, or tell me more about this.
Exactly. Right. And this step is, one of the things that we always ask is, what questions does this raise?
Yes.
Right. And it might be frustrating that sometimes data doesn't give us all the answers. In fact, sometimes data spurns new questions and more questions, but that's not a bad thing. We want to get curious about our data.
Yes. I feel like those are bumper stickers we need. Be curious about your data, and data is for learning. Exactly. That is also the other boilerplate that we always say, right? And so it is certainly for answers, but it also is not just like an end. Yeah. Right. It's, continuous. And I like to say you're peeling the onion. Like, let's go under the layers here to see what's going on, and let's dig deeper. Okay, so hopefully we're able to stimulate some deeper conversations through this analysis phase by asking, what's surprising, what's interesting, what questions does this raise, what's a priority, what's important for us. Okay, Rose, so the next step in the process then is to course correction, right? How do we use that data to inform changes that can improve outcomes?
Exactly. This is really the so what. Based on the data that we've looked at and the challenges maybe that we've identified, what's important, we make decisions about things we might try, things we might change or adjust to have a greater impact, to get closer to the outcomes that we want to have. And this is another place where having a lot of voices in the room can be really important.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a process that we like to do with our clients, and we call creating impact teams. And so that can be a great way that you pull in staff from different positions and different roles, those who are on the front lines, middle management, leadership, your development team, because they're all going to look at that data with a different lens. Like you talked about that experience they have. The people on the front lines might understand some of the why and the how and the reasoning behind that, right? And your development team could help inform what external audiences are thinking about and asking, and what, improvements might need to be made. I do think too, it gives an opportunity where your staff are buying into the process. And so instead of changes coming down from the top where they had no feedback and input, now there's like a rationale behind it.
Yes.
And hopefully some buy-in as to why.
It's more collaborative.
I think too, it can also help validate the time for all your data collection tools. Because we, here it can be challenging and burdensome to fill out these forms, to fill out the paperwork. And staff might say, why? I don't really see it ever being used or talked about. Now they're seeing it being used and talked about.
Exactly. And I think too, a lot of us have probably had challenges with the data being accurate and having those processes go well. And I think when staff see how the data is being used and the importance of accurate data to actually inform decisions in the organization, it makes that data collection process and getting it right all the more important.
Great. So the last step in our data dialogue, data conversation process is check-in and follow-up.
Yeah, absolutely. And this one, I think it can be easy to have a great conversation. We've got great ideas out there. We're going to try some stuff. And then nobody ever talks about it again.
That was a good meeting and I saw nothing.
Exactly. And it's frustrating because that's the whole point of trying things, making course corrections. We have to see if they work. And, if they don't work and our data is telling us, no, we've got to keep trying, then it helps us to go back to check and then make further corrections if we need to.
That's like, if anything, that could just plummet trust and the whole process. So we definitely need to follow through, close the loop, and make sure that we are showing, hey, your feedback is being used and here's how, or here are the changes that we made, based on that feedback. So, go ahead, Rose.
Well, I was just going to say, and that doesn't have to be a complicated process. It can be as simple as closing out your meeting by saying, when are we going to look at this data again? When are we going to return to this and see if what we tried worked?
Right.
Yeah.
And if you already have some of this built into your team meetings, your board meetings, you can pick one of those upcoming that you think will be reasonable or a great time to like circle back and look at this.
Exactly.
So to recap, when we're reviewing our data to help facilitate discussion and conversation, we first want to start with strengths. What's working well? And then we can move on to the challenges. And then the third step there is going deeper in analysis.
Yep. Analyzing through dialogue.
Yes.
Asking questions, getting curious.
Yes. Yep. And then use that to make program improvement.
Exactly.
Think about course corrections that you want to make. Exactly. And then lastly, do that follow-up and check in the process. Well, Rose, do you have a client project that you want to share that we could talk about where we used this process recently?
Yeah, I do have a great example, actually. We recently used this process to talk about data with Lutheran Services in America and their Rural Aging Action Network program. And it was really exciting to see them dive into the dashboard that we had supported and help them build and use that tool to really better understand their data. And I think at the beginning of the process, at the beginning of the conversation, it was a lot of sort of, I don't really know where to start here. What is this information telling us? But by using this process and analyzing through dialogue, everybody in that room walked away with new things to try, learnings that they had gathered from their peers who had, maybe really strong outcomes in a specific area and shared what they had done. And it was amazing to see the energy in the room, the action that was really kind of spurred on by the data.
Yes.
And I think it just really helped to show that the dashboard itself is a wonderful tool, but on its own, it really doesn't do anything for us. The conversation about that tool is what helped to start the action.
Yes.
To make changes.
Yes. So I definitely think the learnings there is to build in that opportunity and that time to go deeper. Well, I love all of these ideas, Rose, that we've shared with our listeners. What would be like your one takeaway, your one tip of how to get started and having conversations about data?
Yeah, I think my one tip would be to look at the times that your team is already gathering. Look at your existing meeting schedule and just add a short time on there to talk about your program outcome data or some other data point that you gather. It doesn't have to be a whole day long retreat. It doesn't have to be something new. It can be part of your existing schedule, but making that a regular practice really helps this to become part of your culture.
Yes, I love that. Again, we don't need to add on another meeting. Nobody wants more meetings in their day, right? And this can be a way to have more deeper, more maybe strategic conversations in some of those existing meetings and spaces. What was great about the Lutheran Services example is that was a part of a conference.
Yeah.
So also it can be a part of a conference when you're gathering different partners or team members. So think about those existing times where people are gathering and coming together. Well, as always, Rose, it's been a joy having you on the conversation. Thanks for bringing your tips and insights from the field and working with our clients. I loved having you on the podcast with me today. Winers, if you haven't yet, please go to our website at transformconsultinggroup.com where you can see all of the episodes that we've aired, but also you can sign up for our newsletter, which we send out once a month that has a lot of great tips and resources, many of which we will link here in our podcast episode show notes. But we would love to have you follow us on our social media channels, which we will also link. And you can find our podcast across all your favorite apps. Well, thanks for joining me, Rose. Cheers to you and all the great work we're doing.
Thanks, Amanda.